Okay, hi everyone. We're coming to you live, well, semi-live, because our dear Alexis could not be with us today. So we thought, in pure fashion, we clearly have the chattiest group, we would just have a chat about what's going on. Before we start, though, we would like to take, we promise, 2 minutes to just ground ourselves in where we are, who we are, and kind of where we're coming to you from today. So, Stan, I'll pass it to you. Why don't you go first?
Wait up, Stanley Daniels one's quest, dual one's quest, Cheskin, Stack one, UBC student, na Elkst, what Elkst. I'm coming from the Lakes District people of the Shuswap Nation, Cheskin First Nation, Stiadam Kenwi, Absapapa Kenwi. Yeah, happy to be here. Alexis?
Yeah, thank you so much, Stan. So, Alexis Kent, as you all know, I am calling in from Minnesota Makoche, which is the Dakota name for Minneapolis, Minnesota. So I believe it's Cappy next.
No e mori, Caprioli Tolo to Taiki. My name is Cappy Vataki. I'm coming to you live from the traditional territory of the Semiahmoo Nation.
Of course, I'm Raquel Tybert. I'm calling in from the territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, and I'm happy to be introducing and here with all of my friends today. So the reason why we thought that we would come away from PowerPoint is because what we've learned from all of the speakers and the leaders that we've engaged with this week is the importance of authenticity, relationships, and orality. So today we're here going to be addressing two separate questions, but mostly just having a conversation about it. We also didn't want to talk about ourselves because we learned that leaders are not people who identify themselves. It's actually the people that we work with that tell us who we are and how we lead. So you might hear us complimenting, challenging, or maybe just shouting out some of the leadership qualities that we see in each other and connecting those to the very wonderful and strong leaders that we looked at today. So crew, our first question is reflect on particular patterns of thinking identified by each leader. What are the patterns of thinking that the leaders use to give them courage, compassion, patience, and etc.?
I can jump in. So I feel like Dee Stewart took me to a new place today in terms of her comments on holism and how she enters into her work with a acknowledgement of the past, but also an embrace and real dedication to the future. Pairing that with Dr. Blackstock, literally talking about multiple dimensions and how that is another aspect of holism. When I think about holism, I think about mind, body, spirit, and holistic being between individuals, but also with the land, also with community with the land, etc. And so to bring in past and present, as well as multiple dimensions today, really broadened my perspective on holism, in addition to Dr. Blackstock talking about the interdisciplinary nature of her work. And, she was busting out a lot of things about physics, right? In my training, right? So much of what society teaches us is that woman is a scientist, right? And it's this box. So then knowing that her work is social services and young people is remarkable. And so I feel like that First Nations ontology that she's promoting blew my mind in terms of what holism actually is today. And I'm in awe. I don't know about you all, but I'm gonna need some time with all that.
Yeah, dichotomy.
I think I'd also add there's like in her presentation today, it seemed one of her big motivations is serving her community, serving her people, serving Indigenous people, right? And so there's this sense of courage to be, first of all, an Indigenous person that is serving in the RCMP, given all the history of what it is, but then be an Indigenous woman serving in the RCMP. And we asked some very challenging questions today in class, and she very unabashedly answered those questions and took them head on. And it felt like it was coming from this place of I'm here because, and I think she said this, I'm here because I need to hold this place. And it even goes back to that comment about the chair and being the person in the chair, because if it's not you that they're sitting in front of, it'll be somebody else. And she clearly is the person who needs to be in that space because of her understanding of what her role is and how she can serve.
Other patterns and themes, y'all, that people connected to?
Well, I want to shout out Stan quickly because I wanted to talk about when Lauren Tabasket came in and spoke to us, and she said, you know, when people are coming into the community, she said, you don't have to adopt what we're doing, but you have to understand it. And that was kind of echoed when Moss was talking, because it was like, if you don't know the history, then you don't know the context and you can't actually lead or guide in this work. And I'm referring to Stan here because I think he challenges us all the time to understand more, to unlearn more. He challenges people, you know, if you're uncomfortable, that's cool, but I'm uncomfortable every day. So I don't really care about that right now. And I think as a leader, Stan, you have a gentle push, but it's in such a good way of telling us, like, keep learning. I have to keep living. You have to keep learning. And that is something that a lot of our leaders echoed throughout the course.
It's a good way of holding people's feet to the fire.
The wagon's burning for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Just making that connection to Dr. Cindy Blackstock and all of her theories of life, and how that connects to that kind of sort of detachment from who we are to community actualization, as our classmate Carly talks about all the time. It was really impactful for me to hear that, and that we have to love our children, we have to love things more than ourselves, and abandon that kind of egocentric Western modality of oppression and violence. So I really enjoyed the reflection on Dr. Cindy Blackstock, and thank you for that.
I'll toss in another question just as a prompt. So we're also considering what other cultural or personal practices these leaders utilize to support their leadership perspectives and practices, just so that if we're hearing things that we may want to connect to there.
I want to jump in and talk about educating through story. And again, I want to point you out against Stan. The way that you answer and the way that you speak through story it is one of my favorite things. It makes it so much more engaging, because we never really know where it's going to go. Like, it is just such an incredible way to express it. It doesn't matter if you're asking a question, it's in the form of a story, or paying somebody a compliment in the form of a story. It is just such an engaging way of interacting with us and sharing your knowledge. So that is something that I've really picked up on that you do, that I really appreciate you exemplifying and modeling that for the rest of us. I'll say that about that.
Thank you. 2 shout outs in one interview. I don't know. You know how to make a brown man red. But again, I tie back to Dr. Cindy Blackstock was talking about, again, you know, Western ways of knowing always kind of like puts these academic people on these pedestals, and it's kind of wild. As an Indigenous person, we're used to being forgotten, we're used to not putting ourselves first and not being that central figure, and it's kind of odd that it happens in Western academics. And it's really a collective effort, and I always say that, like, whenever I introduce myself, a Tooled One's Quest, that's who I am. That's my name, means transforming energy into matter. And then, like, Stiadam Kanwi, I'm from the Lakes District people of the Shuswap Nation. It really grounds us, and it's that collective energy, that collective cultural and language expression that Dr. Cindy Blackstock talks about, again, is really, really powerful and impactful, that we tend to not look at, because it's not APA citation, and through these Western modalities of understanding and perspectives, that's really oppressive and violent towards Indigenous people. So I try to model that the best I can. So I really appreciate your comments today, Raquel and Trappy.
Well,
You're very welcome.
he might be mad at us later, and we truly did not plan a love fest of Stan by any means. We're all gonna compliment each other. Stan, I have to say this, and earlier you were talking and you complimented someone saying, I respect your unconditional regard for young people. And I think I wrote that down and, said to myself, I will work my whole life to be able to demonstrate that. Because that is why we all should be here. And so for you to recognize that in someone else and to see it, and I mean it's just really important work. And I think Cappy did a beautiful job, in jest and in all seriousness, talking about, and Raquel as well, talking about accountability and how you do that with such grace. And I feel like these leaders, one of the patterns and one of the themes that they all had together that Stan also embodies is humor and joy. Like, we had all Indigenous women come to our class and speak, and they were laughing and they took pauses and kind of chuckled. And they're all passionate about what they do, and they all embody an unconditional regard for young people. And so I feel very impacted by that message, and for Stan so beautifully articulating it, because I think it's a very clear teaching that they embodied, that Stan pulled out for us. So thank you, Stan. Once again, love fest. Don't kill us.
That's quite wild. It's quite a, when you see the real life impacts that these people have in their leadership styles with D Stewart, like it really makes a big difference. Those kids carry these kinds of teachings with them for the rest of their lives, and when they're at their darkest space, that's the light that brings them forward. And I see that firsthand as a former youth worker. I see that firsthand as a former outreach addictions worker, and as a leader in my community. It's quite impactful, just something so simple as going back to your culture and language and being grounded in that, and sharing those collective teachings that Dr. Cindy Blackstock talks about so much. It's not about what she's doing, it's about what the work that needs to be done. It's not about taking that on as a role or as an identity. It's about doing what's necessary in order to get the work done. And I really appreciate the story of the flea and the flea lady. Just get it done. There's a huge amount of resources out there, whether they're mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional, that we can implement to save these people and transform them into something that's lasting. And it's gotten us here since time immemorial. So it's been quite an influence on me growing up in some ways. And I want to thank you all for all of your accolades. I appreciate it, and I see the same exact thing in each one of you. And you can't say all these positive things without having a little of that in each of yourselves. You can't see the light and courage without having that light in yourself. So I really appreciate that. We're really just reflecting the love that's in each of our hearts, and so I appreciate that, and the humor that we all carry. I'm not funny, I'm being mean, and people just think I'm being funny. But thank you. It's been really amazing and incredible. I appreciate working with each and every one of you. Thanks so much.
I'm going to flip the page here for a second, Stan, because I'm going to shout out Alexis, because this is something that I wrote down. Fox said something about having the story take on the role of the teacher. And when I thought about that, I truly thought about Alexis, because I have never met a more active listener. And that was one of the things that all of our leaders talked about as well in this week, is that in order to lead, you have to listen. And truly, Alexis, I feel like you are always listening. And when I'm talking to you, you could probably regurgitate. So I can only imagine what you do for your students or for your community. You really and truly hear with your heart, right? You embody that third ear that we were talking about earlier this week, thinking about what that means. So as far as listeners and leaders are concerned, I'm giving you
I had actually also had this exact same thing lined up to say. And I was going to throw in that basket point of the voice responsibility to hear first and then be heard. You are so incredibly thoughtful when you wait your time to speak, and you're so thoughtful about hearing every word that somebody has to say and then answering to all those points. And I really appreciate that because I'm awful at it.
Oh my gosh. Thank you all. I was already tearing up with Stan talking, so then I just really appreciate it. I think listening is such an important practice, and I feel like this program and this class has only I don't know, deepened that for me in terms of the importance of that. And Cappy, you do listen. You just are also a quick processor and then can come up with like a witty quip that helps people get to that next place, frankly, in terms of the spiritual acceptance that they need in the moment. And so, I don't know, you guys keep that in mind. And I really deeply appreciate that.
I love
truly.
you.
And I think
Thank you.
we got so many messages, right? I'm like feverishly flipping through my notebook of, you know, people in the chair are an indication that they feel listened to. Otherwise, they're going to go seek that somewhere else. And I think that that's so key. And Cappy, when you talk about your work with kids, I see that revolving chair, right? I see the kids coming to you. I see them knocking on your classroom door, asking about the regalia, saying we need community help, you know, whatever the time of day, whatever it might need and what it might be. And that's the work. Like that is the work that we're all trying to do in terms of being present to young people and modeling that as a different way of being in the world. So thank you for showing up for your kids, because even though I have not met them, I feel like you're showing up for my kids because that's what you're offering. So, and I feel like our leaders this week talked about that, right? Like our very first speaker talked about how it was all about the skills that get left in the community and not about the titles. And Cappy, that is all, that is you. That is all you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. As we wrap up our podcast, I really just want to appreciate and recognize the generosity of wisdom, data, information, humor, and ask one more question. Of each and every one of you, can you lend me $20, bro?
Well, one quick thing today in the chat. I don't know if you all know this, but there was like a love storm for Raquel and her beautiful voice, and in terms of her balancing, truth telling with making synthesized connections, as well as frankly holding people's feet to the fire. And Raquel, I think you're somebody that accountability for me comes up for big time in terms of you kind of being plain spoken like Dee today of like, nope, you need to go. Nope, that's not going to work. Nope, see this invisible line? You're not going to be crossing it. And you do so with a lot of charm. So
I agree. I really appreciate that about Raquel, just being able to hold non-Indigenous folks accountable, and that's the kind of allyship that I look for in non-Indigenous folks, fucking burn down these wagons with us. We have horses, why do you need a wagon for it? Make it make sense. And I really appreciate that. And working with two non-Indigenous folks, I love the 50 Shades of Red that happens, the increase in credit score, the immediate quality of life just by being in proximity. I love it.
Humor is a transformational leadership approach. Sorry, paradigm and praxis. Any other insightful and wise closing thoughts other than just gratitude for all three of y'all? I just super grateful to work with you, especially when the class is on storytelling and transformational leadership.
I just can't wait to see, talking about that, loving that generation we don't know. I can't wait to see, because at some point we will all be able to see it, no matter we come back as a rock or a tree or a flea, whatever it is. We're going to see the work that we're putting in now. And I have so much faith working with all of you that our transformational leadership is going to make transformational futures for all of those kids. So truly and honestly grateful for the work, guys.
I'm just happy to see more people who are willing to hold people's feet to the fire and say, figure it out, get in the fuck off. That's it.
Yeah. I agree. I'm just here for the food. Somebody said that. All right, thank you.
All right, well, we should probably stop.
Thank you.